How do you do? We're here to sing and play for
dead bodies along with what they believe is a self-inflicted gunshot wound on a third person over on Dolphin Street yesterday afternoon. They got the 911 call hang up around 4:30 in the afternoon.
This is the story of the Stockdale family. Timothy and Catherine Stockdale married in the 1980s and settled on a farm in rural Stark County, Ohio, near the small community of Beach City. Over the years, they raised 4 sons: Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. The Stockdales were devout Christians who homeschooled their boys and kept them largely isolated from mainstream culture. Television, video games, and even casual swearing were banned in the household. Music became the family's primary outlet. Together, they formed the Stockdale Family Band, a Christian bluegrass group. Jacob played fiddle, James played upright bass, and their younger brothers played mandolin and guitar.
Values the Stockdale Family Band.
It's a hard life, but it's a good life. That's the country life. Make it to me. How do you do? We're here to sing and play for you.
When the whistle blows, I gotta go. Well, mama, no man, suck a red train.
By most outside accounts, the Stockdales appeared to be a picture of discipline, faith, and family unity. Catherine wasn't just a mother, she was the boys' school teacher, the family cook, and the band's manager and organizer, booking gigs and building their local following. That work paid off. In 2014, the Stockdale Family Band took first place in a regional Heights Got Talent competition.
The Stockdale Family.
A win Catherine proudly posted to the family's YouTube channel. In 2008, that discipline caught the attention of producers for ABC's reality series Wife Swap. The premise was simple. 2 mothers from radically different households would trade places for 2 weeks, living by the other family's rules. The Stockdales were paired with the Tonkovics, a relaxed, free-spirited family from Illinois. At the time of filming, the Stockdale boys ranged in age. Calvin was 19, Charles 16, Jacob 15, and James just 11. Where they worked for privileges like listening to the radio, the Tonkovich children were used to spontaneity, treats, and screen time. When the swap began, Lori Tonkovich, stepping into the role of the Stockdale household's matriarch, loosened the family's strict rules. She let the boys watch television and play video games, small freedoms most of them had never experienced. Most of the boys embraced it eagerly. Jacob didn't. According to Lori's later recollections, when she offered him that same freedom, he ran outside crying. When she followed to ask what was wrong, he told her his parents had warned him he would face eternal punishment for stepping outside their rules. Lori has since reflected that unlike her own children, who grew up with the freedom to make their own choices, Jacob simply never had that option, and she suggested that lack of choice may have quietly built up inside him for years. At the time, the episode aired as entertainment. Nobody watching in 2008 could have predicted what would happen 9 years later. By 2017, the Stockdale sons were adults. Jacob was 25. His younger brother James was 21. Their parents still lived on the family's Bethlehem Township farm off Route 212 in Stark County. At around 4:36 p.m. on June 15, 2017, dispatch received a 911 hang-up call from a landline inside a home in the 9100 block of Dolphin Street in Bethlehem Township near Beach City. Stark County Sheriff's deputies were sent to check on the address. As officers approached the house, they say they could see someone through an open door. Before they could reach the house, they heard a gunshot. Inside, deputies found 54-year-old Catherine Stockdale and 21-year-old James Stockdale shot dead. Jacob, 25, was found with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He was alive, but in critical condition. Timothy Stockdale, the family patriarch, was at work at the time and was not present during the shooting. The two eldest brothers, Calvin and Charles, were both living out of state and were also not home. Jacob was airlifted to Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland, where he would remain for months recovering from his injuries.
Dead bodies along with what they believe is a self-inflicted gunshot wound on a third person over on Dolphin Street yesterday afternoon. They got the 911 call hang up around 4:30 in the afternoon. The victims, 21-year-old James Stockdale and his mother, 54-year-old Catherine Stockdale. The alleged suspect, James's brother, Catherine's son, 25-year-old Jacob Stockdale. He was flown to Metro Health Medical Center. A neighbor tells us they were part of a bluegrass band called the Stockdale Family Band. On that band's website, we found that the family was featured on ABC's show Wife Swap. They also released a statement early this morning thanking everyone for their well wishes and asking for privacy right now as they figure out what happened. We're going to follow.
Stark County Sheriff George Meyer confirmed to reporters that investigators believe Jacob had shot his mother and brother with a shotgun before turning the weapon on himself.
Yesterday afternoon at about 4:36 p.m., our office received a 911 call from the residents. It was a landline call, not a cell phone call. It was a hang-up call. At that time, after we received the hang-up call, which we do in a number of cases on a daily basis, we responded deputies to the residents. Upon arrival at the residence, the deputies noticed that the front door was open. They gave verbal commands. There was no response. And at that time, there was a gunshot that went off. After the gunshot went off, they tactically approached the house when some backup arrived and discovered that the suspect, Jacob Stockdale, had attempted suicide and shot himself when they arrived. They also discovered two victims in the home, 54-year-old Catherine Barbara Stockdale and 21-year-old James William Stockdale. Both were deceased as a result of a gunshot wound. Deputies continue to investigate the case along with the Stark County Coroner's Office. Once we have more information available on the case, we will provide it to you. Currently, the suspect, Jacob Stockdale, is in Cleveland Metro in critical care.
Any run-ins with Jacob prior to this incident? Maybe
No, ma'am.
not related to the house?
None at all.
You haven't been there, no run-ins, anything? It seems like a really nice, wholesome family. What are you looking at as far as any motive yet at this point?
You know, it's hard to, kind of surmise what the motive may have been. There's some speculation. Don't really want to get into that part of it, but we'll continue to investigate this case and try to determine if there's a motive. Just do not know.
Father indicate any issues that have been leading up to this?
None at all.
Mental health issues?
Never mentioned anything of that nature.
Did you guys not aware of this family? I know we're hearing a lot that they were performers, they would travel around a lot. Were they?
We're learning that as well.
Okay.
We were not aware of that when we responded. As was asked, we had never had a reason to be called to that residence in the past. So we don't have anything in our CAD or any information that we'd been there in the past. So.
He called it a tragedy for both the family and the wider community. News of the killing spread quickly, not just because of the crime itself, but because of who the family was. Local outlets and, soon, national entertainment media connected the shooting to the family's wife swap appearance nearly a decade earlier. Timothy Stockdale released a brief statement describing his wife of over 3 decades as a devoted mother and grandmother. Calvin Stockdale, the eldest brother, remembered James as the sibling who always brought fun and energy to the family. The Stockdales asked for privacy as they grieved, a grief made almost unimaginable by the fact that the person responsible was their own son and brother, still fighting for his life in a hospital bed.
Sitting around.
Oh, hello everyone. I'd like to invite you to the 9th annual Stockdale Family Band Bluegrass and Gospel Show on April Fool's Day. You won't have to be the fool though. We got that covered for you. Click above for more details.
No official motive was released. It wouldn't be for years. Jacob Stockdale survived his injuries but faced a long road before ever facing a jury.
Having had a chance to review the previous report issued by Psychodiagnostic, I am also going to be filing the not guilty by reason of insanity plea and ask the court to order the appropriate evaluations for that plea also.
He was formally charged with the murders, and his case entered a lengthy legal process to determine his mental state. He initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity and was placed in psychiatric facilities while evaluators assessed whether he was competent to stand trial. During this period, in 2019, Jacob reportedly attempted to escape custody twice. The first time, he was found hiding among bookshelves in the facility's library, apparently searching for a way out. A month later, he tried again, attempting to blend in with a group of visitors leaving the building. He wasn't charged for either attempt. Eventually, evaluators determined Jacob was legally sane, both at the time of the murders and at the time of trial preparation. With that determination, his insanity defense fell away. By 2021, 4 years after the killings, Jacob Stockdale's case was finally set to go to trial. But just a week before it began, he changed course. On April 28, 2021, Jacob pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder for the deaths of his mother, Catherine, and his brother, James. In exchange, 2 firearm specifications attached to the case were dismissed. Stark County Common Pleas, Judge Frank Forcioni, sentenced him that same day to 30 years to life in prison, 15 years for each killing, served consecutively.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this particular case, there's been a report that has been filed in this case, and just to walk through it by Dr. Arcangela Woods. It's her opinion based on a reasonable psychological certainty that you are not suffering from a severe mental defect at this time of the charge. And she lists her reasons. She indicates it's her opinion beyond a reasonable psychological certainty that Mr. Stockdale was not suffering from a severe mental disease at the time charged. She's indicating that Mr. Stockdale, in her opinion, based on a reasonable psychological certainty, he was not suffering from a severe mental illness or disease or defect at the time of the offense charged. And an opinion regarding wrongfulness cannot be rendered because his defense is that he's asserting his innocence. So we have this report, we've done the competency, we've done several competency evaluations, we've now done the sanity evaluation. We have a trial scheduled for May 4th of this year. The defense, are you able, first of all, to get in to see your client okay?
Your Honor, we are not at this time able to get into Heartland. We are, however, able to have Zoom conferences with him this week.
You first heard about what happened to the Stockdale family. What was your reaction?
I actually, when my son called me to tell me what had happened, he didn't know who the shooter was. I knew immediately.
You knew in your heart that it was Jacob?
Yeah.
And I switched the rules, and I was going to let them have fun, have a television and video games, and experience life a little bit. He ran outside crying, and when I went out after him, I asked him what was wrong, and he said that his mom and dad, tell him that basically he would burn in hell. He lived in a very controlled environment where his mom and dad taught him or told him what to do. Really wasn't allowed to do anything besides what they wanted. He got up, he worked, I guess homeschooled them, wouldn't let them go out amongst the society. They're very religious, and they are a very, very talented family. But, God says, gives you free will, okay? Free will, they didn't have. They weren't allowed to make choices. I just think that it caught up.
Stark County Prosecutor Kyle Stone told local media he was satisfied with the resolution, noting how unusual it was for the victims and the defendant to belong to the very same family. Jacob was sent to serve his sentence at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, roughly 3 hours from the family's former home. Under his sentencing terms, he is not eligible for parole until August 2048, meaning at minimum, he will serve 15 full years before any possibility of release. To this day, no court filing, prosecutor, or family statement has ever laid out an official motive. Jacob himself has said very little publicly. The most widely repeated theory comes from Lori Tonkovich, the woman who briefly played mother to Jacob during that 2008 broadcast. She has suggested that the extreme control the Stockdale boys grew up under, the isolation, the constant threat of damnation for small freedoms, may have quietly built pressure inside Jacob for years, until it broke loose all at once. It's a theory, not a confirmed explanation. Mental health, family dynamics, and whatever happened in that house in the years between 2008 and 2017 remain largely a private matter that only the surviving Stockdales fully understand, and one they have chosen, almost entirely, not to discuss publicly. What is on the record is this: the family privately asked the judge to show Jacob leniency at sentencing, even after everything that happened. The Stockdales were introduced to the world as an example, a family whose faith and discipline stood in stark contrast to modern life. For 2 weeks in 2008, millions of viewers watched them as entertainment. 9 years later, that same family became something else entirely, a case study in how little the cameras ever really show us. Catherine and James Stockdale are remembered by those who loved them as a devoted mother and a joyful younger brother. Jacob Stockdale remains in prison, with decades left to serve. And the question of why, the one thing everyone still wants answered, remains locked behind a door nobody has opened.